So at this point, I think we'll do is welcome back Sandra and Kathy along with Jim, and we'll dive into a few of the questions that have been submitted online for our mission directorates to consider. So yeah, if each of you could rejoin us. And again, thank you, all three of you, for coming online today and talking to our community in the Lunar Surface Science Workshop. That's really really helpful to hear your perspectives. So I'll jump into a few of the questions. And again, please feel free to jump in and answer these. But they're not specifically addressed to anyone because we're kind of talking about the multiple directorates here. Artemis includes contributions from several directorates. I think that's clear from seeing the discussion just now. What is NASA doing now to enable cross-directorate planning? And are there plans for future cross-directorate boards, offices, or programs to ensure strategic integration of science and technology with human exploration and the success of Artemis?
Well, I'll just start and then let Jim and Sandra jump in. In fact, Sandra's on one of the teams. It's called a federated board, and it's got our high horsepower from each of the mission directorates, and they work together on kind of tactical and strategic planning to make sure that within each of the mission directorates that are working levels that we're thinking about the right things. And then we also have what's called an expanded federated board that also includes all kind of the agency management levels and ensures that the plans we have going forward also are consistent with administration direction and align with future opportunities. But let me shut up and let the other two talk now.
Yeah, I would just add, those are the key boards, and I think they're functioning well. I would just add that there's obviously regular communications, like from AA to AA. So I know Thomas meets both with Jim and with Kathy on a weekly, if not daily basis, making sure that there's full alignment. Obviously, there's alignment with the ninth floor across the board too, in terms of our strategy and implementation. I really do believe that we are integrated as an agency in ways that have not been seen before. So I think the collaboration is great. It is working, and I think that parallel level. So for example, I meet with the deputies on a regular periodic basis. So in addition to the formal boards where we're having the integration discussions, we also have the less formal opportunities to make sure that we're discussing any issues or challenges. If there's a priority that needs to be set between directorates, we're having those discussions both in the formal as well as the informal processes. Jim?
Yeah, and then I'll just add, well, first of all, if you stick around for the next panel, you're going to hear about the members of the Federated Board talking. So that will be good. And the other thing I'd say is whenever we, and really it goes, I think, across the board, there's Science Mission Directorate, of course, leads the Eclipse program. We participate regularly with all their activities, with their PRISM calls, with their, the selections of those. When we put out topics, and or make selections, we always make sure that our sister organizations are there whenever it's relevant, and participating, and we use heavily their inputs in just developing overall strategy. So I guess I'll just stop there. It's working pretty well. We got a lot of different ways. There's the at the top you do have the interactions that we have, and then a formal board, a federated board for there. But then also at every step of the way, there's interactions that go into it. When HEO does studies of their architecture, we're always supporting those.
Great, thank you. Next question. How does NASA define sustainable? ISS has reached continuous human presence for over 20 years now. What does a sustainable Artemis program mean to each directorate?
Okay. Go ahead, Jim. You go ahead. Sorry.
No,
I'll do it first.
All right. Well, Yeah, it is a term that we actually toss around a lot, and say, okay, what exactly do we mean? And I know we've gotten written down, so I'm almost certainly not going to get it right compared to what we've written down. But when I think about it in core terms, it's we go to when we go into Lunar and we have a presence there. It's not just reliant on it's one that we can afford to go. It's one that we can afford to continue to go back and to continue to build, but it's not incumbent on NASA being the only participant. And that when we have participants with us, we bring them along. Certainly, we can be a major customer, but we are looking for opportunities for public-private partnerships and to broaden it just past NASA.
Yeah,
Yeah.
oh, go ahead, Sandra. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, so I think you'll bring it home, Kathy, because from the HEO perspective, I think you have the biggest piece of this. But certainly from an SMD perspective, I mean, as Kathy had mentioned during her talk, it's really from a science perspective, we're laying the foundation, right? We're providing the science that's providing the information that's needed to, have both a sustainable human presence as well as to continue exploration, and we're leveraging the technologies that Jim's developing. Over to you, Kathy.
So we're laying in what are the things that we really feel like we need to learn and have tested out before we feel like we can safely make the next step. We're a firm believer in we need to be making steps. So we obviously had initial missions into Leo, doing initial things from a human perspective. And then with us having ISS as a Leo platform for so long, we've learned a lot and we're continuing to learn. But we also know that we need to learn some things at the moon. And by having the orbiting the gateway platform around the moon, that will be critical for us to make sure we can send people to another planet and back and have a reasonable risk posture to be able to do that. And we feel that that will take us some time, right? So for us, we have objectives of things that we'll need to learn over time, and we'll be learning more things over and over that we'll probably learn more, and those will all kind of feed into us continue to kind of make the check marks on the key things that we're going to need to learn to make sure that we can fly humans safely to Mars. Sandra's exactly right. The science and the key technologies that we are learning now and are the mission directors are what kind of lay the foundation for us to then build on and be able to have a reasonable risk posture to go do that next. What we all know is a huge step. So we need to take this first step. And the moon's going to be a very, very important first step. And I think it'll be a landing place for us for a while we'll continue to put the tools in our toolbox that we will need to have to do the next really gigantic step.
Great. Thank you all for your perspective on that. I think we have time maybe for one more question. Lunar resources are critically important as we explore the moon. What are NASA's plans for leveraging resources on the moon and in cislunar space for Artemis?
I'll start because, again, I mean, I think the answer is similar in that from a science perspective, we're going to help identify where those resources are for utilization, and we'll learn more about them and how, coupled together with Jim's activity as well, obviously, about how to leverage the existing capabilities and make them into something that's more usable. Over to you, Jim.
Yeah, I'll just say that I think the first step is really finding the resources. Second step is identifying how to utilize the stuff, and take advantage of it is a little bit farther away. But what we have in our plans is to look at both mining water from lunar ice, capturing that, and demonstrating that we can convert it into usable form. Or and also obtaining oxygen from the regolith. There's a lot of oxygen in the regolith that's going through it. And so what we've got in our plans is kind of a leader follower, where the lunar ice conversion is our lead path. Our follower is the regolith, oxygen from regolith. But we intend to fly both of those activities, and ultimately leading up to a pilot plant type demonstration, in a number of years, depending on budgets, of course. But we have that didn't work. We have a lot of initial capabilities there, and what our hope is when we've gotten that and demonstrated it, that's when you start saying, okay, are there customers out there? Are there people out there that commercial entities that can take advantage of that? And are there things that we can take advantage? So it'll be that step then later on. But right now we're in the let's develop and demonstrate.
Yeah, I think we're going to learn too, right? To me, resources is kind of, we tend to view it like, okay, what's the moon made of and how to use that? But there's also this, how do you really understand the environment? How do you learn new things about it in some ways that can then really help us maybe better understand what the real challenges are going forward, right? And how do you, another resource to me is just doing the mission and figuring out how to more effectively do the mission in a way that also may help us be a little bit smarter about how we make that next step. And so we have learned so much. We learned so much, I go back and I think 20 years of station, and we learned so much about first the technological part of like how to assemble a space station in a really tough environment, but we've learned so much more about how to operate and how to live 365 days and how to be able to do that over time more and more cost effectively and with multiple providers, and continue to find ways that we're able to give new opportunities to other folks. And so I think that term resource can be kind of looked, and we can open our aperture, and there's some of the resource may be, like Jim says, us figuring out how to really optimize the mission and the environment and using it. The thing we're not talking very much about is that it's an opportunity to have a different terrestrial relationship with our international partners. And so just the ability for us to be able to really find and work like things like the Artemis Accords and some of these other things where we're really trying to figure out what are the key things and how do we work within a legal framework and a international framework to be able to do these kind of activities, to have multiple partners, to have multiple international and commercial and academia partners, to be able to share data. Those are all resources too, right? So, I talk a lot about, and I know all of us do about, when we're going and doing this big problem. Jim doesn't know how to build a mining capability on the moon yet. He doesn't know how to, we don't know how to solve these problems yet. But what's really cool about this is we're going to be figuring it out. And as we figure it out, we're going to need lots of brains out there. I was kind of joking when I said 350 million people, because I really view like it's going to take the smarts of a lot of people out there to be able to solve these really, really, really tough problems. It's why I depend on Jim and his folks, and I depend on Sandra and her folks, and to be able to go really help us to be able to go do these tough things.
Great. Thank you all for your answers to these questions. And I really do want to thank Sandra, Kathy, Jim for participating here. It was great to hear from you, as well as Steve, if he's still on. Thank you for opening this up for us. And I also want to thank Ryan Watkins for driving the slides for our session here this morning. So thank you, everybody. It's a great kickoff for us.